Okie dokie. So I know a lot of you love shoulder balance, and often it is taught. I'm not sure about the classes you go to, but here in Cape Town, shoulder balance is often taught at the end of every single class. It used to be, I think it's changing now. Things have shifted and less so, but it used to be taught at the end of every single yoga class. Have you experienced that? Yeah, the other classes you go to do a lot of shoulder balances at the end. And of course, in Iyengar yoga, I mean, it's seen as the queen pose and headstand being the king pose, and are taught as well in pretty much every single session, right? So before we even get started and kind of jump in and talk about it, what are your feelings around shoulder balance? Is it something you love? Who loves doing shoulder balance? Cool, awesome. And for some people, it feels comfortable. Who really doesn't like shoulder balance? Oh, okay. No strong opinions. Okay. Sarah, not too sure. Does anyone have any discomfort, any issues, breathing, sore neck, anything uncomfortable? Nicole, yeah, neck doesn't feel so good. So it's a pose that we don't recommend you teach in large public classes. And why do you think that might be?
Because it's quite technical, and it's not like if you fall out of a handstand, you can catch yourself or fall to the side. If you fall, your weight is already, your neck is already in a compromised position.
Absolutely, Stefan. Your neck is already in a compromised position. Okay. So in shoulder balance, if we look at the shape of the pose, we've got our neck, and if you're trying to do it straight, like it's taught, your neck is pretty much bent at like a 90-degree angle, right? So just feel what that's like already now when you fold forward. It's quite a big stretch, right? And remember, as we've been moving through all the poses, we're always saying don't overwork your neck. And then we jump into something like shoulder balance. This seems a bit extreme, right? So, I mean, there's nothing wrong about doing this with your neck bending forwards in that neck flexion, but the issue is load. So you bend your neck to quite a extreme range, and then you go and put your whole body weight on it. That's how it is for most people, okay? But it's called shoulder balance for a reason, because you're supposed to actually have your weight on your shoulders and not your neck, okay? But this then opens up a whole lot of discussion, because most people, and I'm talking like 90% of people, cannot get their shoulders into the ideal position in order to take the weight off your shoulders and not have all the weight on your neck. So most people doing this pose with tighter shoulder, especially think about people who are sitting like this at a desk most of the time, right? And then all of a sudden now they sit like this. Now you're going to bend them like this and try and get them to tuck their shoulders underneath them and then put the weight on their shoulders and knock their neck. It's impossible, okay? So that's why it's not okay for most people. Okay. And it might be all right for those that can get their shoulders into a more ideal position, that they can have less weight on their neck or very little or no weight at all, ideally. Okay. Our neck, just as we spoke about with headless headstand, is not really designed to take your entire body weight. Okay, you can even just see how the spine is shaped. I mean, our neck vertebra are a lot smaller and are a lot more mobile, so that we can look around and see, but are not necessarily the most strongest, stable part of our body. And we have to be careful about what we do with our necks. And shoulder balance is a risky pose. Okay, and just as Stefan said, it's not something you can like fall out of. It's often, you've probably heard the cue, don't turn your head while you're here. And then everybody's like looking around with all the weight on their neck. And so it just puts you as a teacher in a risky zone. What you would hate to have is someone go and hurt their neck in your class and then come and blame you for teaching a pose that now we're aware is potentially a bit dodgy for most people. Would you agree? What are your thoughts and feelings on that? Would you agree? Do you disagree? I mean, please feel free to argue. Sakile, we do things like this in Pilates as well, right? We do the bicycle and a few poses like this. In Pilates, it's taught very differently. And we're going to have a little take on that as well, because in Pilates, instead of being vertical, like upright in a shoulder balance, they're actually a little bit more leaning back like this with weight on your elbows, and it works your abdominals a whole lot more as well, but there's no weight on your neck. And maybe there's something like to that, and we're going to explore that a bit as well. So any opinions, any views at this point talking around potential risks around shoulder balance?
Sorry, this is just not a comment about risks, but just when I did Iyengar yoga, obviously we did a lot of them, as you said, but it was almost always propped in like 5 different ways at once. Like a chair and a strap and a blanket and a whatever all the time.
Yes. So absolutely, Julie, and I'm going to show you today, and we're going to talk and look at shoulder balance, and I'm going to do it propped. Just as the Iyengars would, maybe not quite as much. If I had all the Iyengar props, and if I knew all of you had the Iyengar props, we would totally do that. I often do it with a chair, and they often do it with foam blocks and bolsters and strap your arms, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And it is actually better. And I'll explain that as well, to have a little bit of height underneath your shoulders, so that your neck, instead of being bent down all the way, it's at less of a angle. And it really does help a lot. So when I do it for you just now, I'm going to do it with 2 blankets underneath my shoulders to give my neck a little bit more space. And it's kind of like the bare minimum propping. And if you want to give it a bash, I would only do it, again, recommended for you with 2 blankets underneath you. So we're going to explore that, definitely, to keep the weight off the neck at less of a just extreme range. So there's something to all that propping. Okay, so let's think about what our arms are doing in shoulder balance. Okay, so we roll our legs over to Halasana, and then we place our hands to the back of the ribs, right? So what would we call this position when our arms go back? Shoulder extension, yes. So we're taking our arms back into shoulder extension, and then we're bending our elbows and placing our hands to the back of our ribs, correct? So I would like you to now come into that position, and we're going to have a look at our shoulders. And if you can be seen, it would be really nice for us to compare different shoulders in the shoulder balance position, and whose shoulders may be able to get into a more ideal position and whose shoulders won't be able to get into the most ideal position. Okay, so arms go back, we take the hands back, place them on the back of the ribs. So what are you feeling stretch when you do this? Pecs. Yeah, Sarah's going like this. You're feeling the front of those shoulders stretching, right? So if we want to get into shoulder balance, and I hope you can see yourself on the screen if you just point forwards, so you can look at yourself. It'll just be interesting. We'll look at everyone else. So if you sit like me, what we're looking for in shoulder balance is when we go back, we sometimes interlace our fingers, and then we tuck one shoulder and then tuck the other shoulder, right? And then place hands on the back of the ribs. Ideally, you shouldn't be able to see your elbows sticking out behind you, okay? The ideal position, like all the inversions we've done, we don't want our elbows flaring out to the side. We want to tuck them underneath us. It's kind of the same in shoulder balance, but your arms are back behind you in a very different way. So this is a great place to check who would even be able to get their arms back there. So let's all do it now. Place your hands at the back of the ribs. Fingers are pointing down. Walk your hands up your ribs as high as you can. And then roll your shoulders back. And what can you see your elbows sticking out? Even for me, my elbows are pointing out a little bit. My shoulders have been very tight today as well. So what we're looking for, like Julia, you got your hands on your back ribs or your fingers interlaced. She's got them there. So Julie, can you see when she's taking her arms back? I can't see her elbows pretty much. They pretty much disappeared behind it. Same for Melissa. So for those where you can't even see your elbow sticking out, you may be able to tuck your shoulders underneath enough and then be able to push down so that there's more weight in your shoulders and less on your neck. Let's see. Let's be honest, right? So my shoulders don't quite get into the ideal position. Amy, a little, not so much. Raquela, almost. Lauren, I can't see those arms. I think Lauren can get her arms really far back. Fiona can get them quite far back. Sakili, they're sticking out a bit. Stefan's are sticking out. Anna's are sticking out. Marlene, I can't see those elbows. Marlene can get her arms back. Carmel can see. Julie, we've seen. Nicole, we can get those arms back. You're like me, elbows are sticking out. Alicia, they're sticking out. Shakira, sticking out a little bit. Hayden, not too much. Candace, elbows are sticking out. Sarah, sticking out. So can you see, for most of us, it's going to be very difficult to be able to tuck our shoulders underneath enough to be able to push down and keep the weight on our actual shoulders. Again, you're all a bunch of flexible yogis. We're not thinking about the average person that's just walked into a yoga class that has sat pretty much 8 hours behind a desk, okay? So this is something you need to take into account. And this is why if you can't get your shoulders into the ideal position, more than likely you're going to have more weight on your neck, and then it's going to take it to not be okay. Maybe if your shoulders can tuck quite comfortably underneath you and you can push down, do it with a supported blanket, you can breathe okay, and have your weight a little bit further back, which I'll chat about a little bit more. Maybe that pose is okay for you. Be aware, it's not okay for most people. Okay, and you're going to feel really horrible if someone walks out of your class and go, oh, that pose really hurt my neck. And it can hurt the neck badly. Okay, it can be like bad sore. So something to really be mindful of. What do you think the benefit of this pose would be? Like, why would we teach it if we wanted to?
Great for the lower back.
We can do a lot of things, like even just like plow with less weight. If you want a lower back stretch and you want to get a lot of rounding. So say now we want to teach something like Titibasana, firefly pose. And what Hayda's doing now, she's rolling her legs over her head and you feel a really strong stretch through your whole back. What you can do this in a way that doesn't put too much weight on your neck. So Hayda, can you stay there for me? And do you mind if I spotlight you for a second? So Hayda, instead of rolling all her weight towards the head side, I would say to Hayda, can you roll back a little bit more towards your hands? So she's got fairly long hamstrings. She's able to do that. Now there, she's taken the weight off her neck and placed more weight towards the shoulder side of the body. That is okay. And if you're looking for a back stretch, this is totally fine. And Hayda, since you're there, you can open your legs out to the sides. You got like an open leg position. And this would be quite a cool prep for Titibasana or something like that, right? What you don't have to do is put all the weight on your neck and take your feet that far over. Even Hayda, curl back a little bit more towards your hands. You'll feel your abdominals work and you actually get more stretch on your back. And this would be more beneficial. She can turn her head now because there's no weight on her head. All the weight's on her shoulder blades and maybe on the back of her ribs. There you're going to get more of a back stretch. And if you're peak posing for something where the spine is really round and you want to work these shapes, this is how I would do it. Hey, to see if you can take your arms through your legs and reach your hands up through your legs up to the ceiling. So you're going to have to use a little bit of core to balance. Yes. She's now, I'm so glad you're demonstrating this because my back hates it. Now she's doing Titibasana lying on her back. And it would be a really fun way to peak pose sequence for something where you wanted that strong rounding in the back, or she wanted to get her foot behind her head, another extreme pose. This is cool, but look how far back she is. Can you see her pelvis isn't over her shoulders? Her weight is further back, just as they also do in Pilates and other forms of movement that do these shapes. Thanks, Hayda. And then coming back down. Thank you for demonstrating that for us. So you can still use these shapes, but don't put all your weight over to the neck side. curl your pelvis back towards the hand side more, or the other side, so that there is no weight on your neck. Does that make sense? Would you agree? What are your feelings on this?
I could feel it, definitely. There's a big difference in when I moved my pelvis down back towards my hands, it takes all the pressure off.
That's it. That's exactly it, Hayden.
And you get more hip compression as well doing that.
Exactly. So you get actually more out of the pose, and you'll feel your abdominals are working harder, more hip compression and flexion, more rounding in the back if that's what you're working for some poses where you need that rounding. And that is how we would work these shapes safely. So I'm not saying never do anything like this, just do it in a better way. Okay. Now, Ada's got quite long hamstrings, which makes that a bit easier. For those that have tighter hamstrings, might not be able to put their feet on the floor. What do you think would happen if you had tighter hamstrings and you were really trying to get your legs over and put your feet on the floor? There's going to be a little bit more risk going on there. What do you think is going to happen?
Transfer more weight into your neck to get your legs further behind you.
You are so right, Candice. She does this. Because the hamstrings... Thanks, Candice. You're so right. I was looking at yours, hoping you were going to answer that. So because Candice, her hamstrings are a little bit tighter, she can't do that huge amount of hip flexion, folding from her hips and fold in half. So she's going to rock more weight over to her head side to put her feet on the floor. So those with tighter hamstrings are a little bit more at risk of this dropping over to the head side. So it's not always about putting your feet on the floor. The feet can also hover, and how I'm going to show you, your feet can also pop onto a wall, which feels really nice. So don't worry about putting your feet on the floor. Who cares? That's not the point. You would actually get more benefit out of the pose having your feet hovering off the floor. You'd have to work harder to hold that pose, which is a good thing. Okay. So we've discussed this a little bit.
You get lower, you can feel the abdominals scrunching up.
Yes. And there's loads of cool poses, and I'll touch on them when we do the supine poses. Hayda demonstrated one of them with the feet open. And then you can also do Paschimottanasana, those that did the review today. You'll forward fold with both legs straight, but lying on your back. And it's really cool because you can get that juicy lower back stretch that some of you love from these poses, even more so without any risk of that weight on your neck and not putting any of your students in any kind of risky place. And it's a better pose. Okay. So any questions at this point? Anything you want to chat about? Anything you've experienced? Does this kind of make sense? Do you disagree?
Well, I don't think this is something that you should at all try to teach if you haven't felt it. Because if you've done it now, you can see where it starts stretching. So you can look at your students and see, hang on, I can see that from her body and her hamstring, the tightness, that she's going to start hurting her neck at that point. But you can't tell if you don't know what it feels like.
Exactly. Absolutely. So at some point, whether it's today or when we do the supine poses, we'll all have an experience of this. And I also prop you with the blankets as well, so you can get a feeling of, if you haven't had it with a little bit of support, maybe you can fold your mats or use some folded blankets like I'm going to use, so that we can feel how we can move into these shapes in a safer, mindful way. Okay. All right. Let's just do a little sun salutation if you are moving today, just to warm up before we explore these poses physically. Okay, so let's just come to standing at the top of our mat. And then we'll take the arms up overhead for high mountain. Inhale. And a nice slow forward fold. We want a little bit of hamstring warming here because they are going to be stretching in the next few poses a little bit as we enter. Nice slow forward folds. I love it. And then coming into a halfway lift, pressing the chest forwards. And then grounding through the hands, taking a step back into your plank. Holding plank. And then moving the hips up and back into downward facing dog. We're not going to move into baby cobras because we actually want to be rounding out the back for the next little while. Gazing to the top of the mat, option to walk, step, or jump to hands. And coming into our halfway lift, inhale. Exhale, forward fold. Rise on up to standing, reach up. And then relax your arms down to your sides. Do 2 more rounds in your own time exactly like that. So this should be like coming home for you, the sun salutation. If you want, you're all muted, so you can even cue yourself through that so you get used to teaching sun salutations comfortably. And wherever you're done, you can come back into a seated position or child's pose and take a few breaths there. Okie dokie. When you're ready, come to seated. Let's take eagle arms. Hook your right elbow on top of the left elbow. Take your eagle arms and we're just going to work the rounding between the shoulder blades. So for our first little halasana, we're going to focus on that rounding in the spine and the rounding in the back. So from your eagle arms, actually curl back a little bit so you round through the shoulders. And what feels really yummy is a nice little side stretch, moving from side to side, feeling a good release into between the shoulder blades and the upper back, so that we can round through those poses. And then slowly coming back up, change the hook of your arms, other one on top. And then round and just feel a good stretch between those shoulders so that when we roll over into Halasana, we're thinking of having our weight here where you're feeling that stretch between your shoulders and your upper back and not on our neck. Okay, so just identifying with that rounding in the back. And then slowly coming up. And then when we move into shoulder balance, if you are, you can take your hands behind you and just interlace your fingers and feel that little stretch across the shoulders. So this is where we would interlace our fingers, tuck the one shoulder, lean over, then tuck the other shoulder and move into shoulder balance. Then we would place our hands onto the ribs and just feel that last little squeeze of your elbows coming back. Okay. And it's tough and it's tight and it's hard. Okay. So firstly, now we just warmed up very basically. I'm going to demonstrate just quickly for you with the blanket support. So the reason why I've taken the blankets, so I'm going to have only my shoulders on the blanket. Okay. And I would normally like it even higher, but all the props at the studio, so we may do. What the blanket is going to do is it's going to have my shoulders a little bit higher so that my neck doesn't need to bend quite at 90 degrees. It's going to keep my neck in a little bit more of an easy angle, not fully bent. Okay. It takes some getting used to. And I'm also going to be aware that my elbows slip on the blanket. So you could always fold your yoga mat, but we'll do that when we do the shoulder balance version. Let's just start off with this. Okay. So firstly here, I'm going to come in line. It's a bit of a fiddle and it's helpful when you have someone to watch you. So you're going to have to just check this for yourself. Can you see my head is off the blanket and my shoulders are on the blanket? Okay. And I'm going to have about 4 fingers, okay, from my shoulder to the edge of the blanket. Because remember, I'm going to roll over. So you're not right on the edge. You've gone in about 4 fingers or so. Okay, this is the fiddly bit that you may have to explore. And sometimes it'll feel uncomfortable if you haven't got it in the right place. Okay, so it's a bit of a fiddle, but if you can get it in the right place, it feels a lot more spacious. So here, even already, I should have a nice gap. I should be able to see the sun shining through, that I've kept my neck in its natural curve, right? Like a little curvature upwards. And I'm not going to flatten my chin into my chest. Okay, so that's what the blanket is helping. Does that make sense? To keep my neck more in a natural curve and not to flatten my neck onto the floor. Okay, then from here, arms to the sides, legs up to the ceiling, and as you all know, and it's really cool, I'm a little bit far away, but I can bring my feet onto a wall. For those with tighter hamstrings, this will feel really nice. Okay, I'm a little bit far, a little bit closer would be better. And now here, I'm not going to try and roll over towards my feet. Can you see I'm actually curling back like you saw Hader do? My feet can stay hovering off the floor, or if hamstrings allow, my feet can come to the ground. Can you see I'm sending my pelvis back? So that's why I can speak clearly to you. I've got no compression in my neck. My weight is more on my shoulders and my upper back, and my neck feels completely free and in its natural curve. And this is how you would want to do Halasana. Okay, so let's just start off with that. And you can get a nice slow back stretch on the way down. Okay, let's just start off with that. And if you have a blanket, fairly firm blanket, I mean, in Iyengar yoga, there's loads of firm blankets are great. But just give that a bash with whatever you have, just to feel a little bit of height. And if you want to try it with the wall, it actually feels really, really nice, especially if you tend to find that you put more weight over if your hammies are a bit tighter. Okay, so some of you have gone already. So Candace, don't worry about putting feet on floor. Let your feet hover like I had. And then once, if you have, so Stefan, don't tuck your shoulders under for this one. We're going to do the opposite here. You're going to let your shoulders and upper back round. Okay. So hopefully you found that your neck is not on the blanket. Your neck is off the blanket. Only your shoulders are on the blanket. You've got a little bit of space, about 4 fingers from your shoulder to the edge of the blanket, if you're going to be precise. It's a bit of a fiddle. You might take some play. Don't dismiss it if it feels uncomfortable. You might have to try it a few times. If you've rolled your legs over, you can use the wall or have your feet hovering. Now roll back towards your hands a little bit. Can you feel there that the weight has come off your neck? You're getting the nice rounding in your spine. You could put your feet on the floor if your hamstrings were happy to. And even Candace, for you, that looks perfect. You can actually put your feet on the floor because your pelvis is further back towards your kitty cat and there should be no weight in your neck. And then can you feel you can breathe quite easily? Alicia, you could curl your bum back a little bit more. Yes. Can you feel the difference?
Hi, Laura. I'm here. Sorry, I'm so late.
Cool, Dasha. Hi. Curl back even more if you want and just explore the shape. Like if you're trying to hover your pelvis just off the floor, you've curled back so much. These are a nice, safe place to play in, a nice, safe range of movement. Don't try and put your pelvis over your shoulders. Don't try stack. Curl your bum back the opposite way. And then maybe you're feeling now, lift your chin away from your chest, that the blanket is helping you to maintain a natural curve of your neck, that you feel that your neck is less flat and squished on the floor. And it should feel totally free. Like the weight is all on your shoulders and your upper back, and there's nothing going on in your neck really. It should be totally free. And then whenever you're ready to come down, you can slowly lower, and I would like to hear how that felt for you. So we can explore this completely safely without any issues on the neck, because your weight was on your shoulders and your bum was back and not on your neck. How do we feel?
That felt really nice.
Candace, that feel better?
Yeah, it felt really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that should feel nice and a good stretch, and you can have all those indulging feelings from those poses safely.
Yeah.
Okay. You feel how nice and free your neck feels, like your eyes don't feel like they're bulging, your face doesn't turn purple, you don't feel the restriction that you can't breathe, all those benefits. And you can do loads of different arm versions there as well, just by having your weight further back. How did the blanket feel? I know it's hard when we're doing this all at home and we don't have the most ideal blankets and props and all the rest, but maybe you could feel how it helped to keep your shoulders just a little bit higher and kept your neck a little bit freer. It may take some self-exploring to find the most ideal positioning. Any views on that? I know what it's like at the end of the day. How did it feel, Hader? You worked with your blanket there.
Yeah, that was great. That's quite a big difference from what I did earlier and now.
Yeah.
And I felt that I could really move, like my neck was completely free.
Yeah.
And there was no weight. It felt light. Yeah.
So we did the same thing as you did earlier now, but then just a little bit propped, and you could feel how it gave you even more freedom in the neck. And that's exactly what I was hoping. So yay.
And then the blanket it doesn't stop like there. I mean, it's just a little bit over the shoulder, right?
Exactly. So it starts like you start about 4 fingers away from the blanket. Then when you roll over, you've got a little bit of a gap. So basically, if you feel on your neck, that big bony protrusion at the bottom of your neck, you kind of want the blanket across there once you've rolled over. And then from upwards from there, the neck is nice and free. And that's the really fiddly part, to get the blanket in that right place.
Okay.
But anywhere around there, a little bit high, a little bit low, shouldn't be a drama, but that's ideally that positioning. So you've kind of got the rest of your neck completely free. Okay, cool. So that feel nice. You're all with me. You agree? If you don't agree, please tell me. And it's lovely to hear other opinions as well. Okay. Cool. So let's look at the shoulder balance next. Okay. So now we're going to be taking our legs up, and we're going to try and tuck our shoulders underneath us. We know not all of us are going to be able to get into the ideal position, but by having our weight back now, even in shoulder balance, so it might not be like a vertical candlestick. You're going to be back a little bit. You're going to feel how you can do a safe shoulder balance with less compression on the neck. It might still not be an ideal pose for you, but it may be a bit better. So I'm going to show you first. You can use your blanket again, please. And then I'm just going to show you what you want to feel when you are there. Okay. So I'm going to do exactly the same coming into it from Halasana. Right now, because we don't want our elbows to slip out on your blanket, the Iyengis are very precise about this. What you can do is fold your mat over. So my shoulders are still on the soft, squishy bit, but my elbows are going to be where the mat is nice and grippy, so that my elbows don't slip out. Okay, so if you want to be pedantic like me, it is helpful because the blanket is slidey, so it does make a huge difference. In Iyengar yoga, they would even tie your elbows together with a strap to try and keep them together. It doesn't work always for everyone because you need that mobility in the joint to begin with. But anyway, so from here, same thing. Make sure my neck is free. Arms are down to my sides. I'm going to take the legs, roll them over. Feet can touch or not touch, doesn't matter. I'm going to interlace the fingers. Straighten arms. I'm going to lean off to tuck one shoulder, lean off to tuck the other shoulder. You can have your feet on the wall to do this, which is actually awesome. Okay, so I'm trying to tuck my shoulders under as much as possible to get into that ideal shape. Bring my hands to the back ribs. And now from here, instead of trying to walk your hands down and force your neck into this shape, rather have your pelvis back a little bit, rest more weight to your elbows, okay, and to your hands, rather than trying to shove your chin into your chest and be straight, okay? And then everyone can pretty much get into a safer shoulder balance, and you can see I can talk quite clearly here. I'm working a bit harder, but there's more weight back and less weight on my neck, and hopefully we'll get as much weight as possible on those shoulders. But as we know, not everyone can get into that ideal position. But have your weight back and it's a bit better. So let's feel that. Instead of trying to force yourself vertical, go back a little bit more. And this is how they do it in Pilates as well. Okay, so when you're ready, don't rush, take your time. Your head is off the blankets. Your shoulders are just on. That's a dasher. Once you've rolled your feet over, your feet can come to the wall or hover or maybe on the floor. And already there you can roll back a bit. Now, Stefan, you are quite straight, which is cool, but now put your weight on your elbows. Just shift the weight back into the elbows. You can stay as you are, just shift the weight into your elbows. Can you see how that will free you up? That is the idea. If you are able to get your shoulders in quite a stable position. Okay, for the rest of you, interlace your fingers. Slowly tuck one shoulder under, then the other shoulder under. We're really trying to get those onto the tops of the shoulders as much as possible. Then place hands to the back of your ribs or lower back. And then as your legs come up, lean your weight back into your hands. Put your weight back a bit more towards your elbows and notice how that takes the weight off your neck and puts it more through the shoulders and upper arms. See how much weight you can lean back. Even if you're not in a straight line, who cares? Your neck is safe, and that's more important than straight lines. Okay, and this is a safer way to do it regardless of what your shoulders can do. A lot of you, your elbows have slipped out because that is just how your shoulders are. But now having your weight further back is at least not putting all the weight on your neck. And that is the idea. Does that make sense? You want to keep your neck in its natural curve, weight on the arms or shoulders and not on your neck. Then release and slowly come down. If you've just got there and want to be there a bit longer, go for it. So a very different way of approaching shoulder balance, right? So how did that feel? A bit different? Alicia?
So this pose is known to be calming at the end of a class. And it never feels calming for me, especially after a stressful day, because it feels so much compression and this felt so much better. I could breathe and there's nothing making me stress more.
Because not breathing is a bit stressful.
No, and don't move your neck and don't all these warnings and
I know.
It's
horrible to even be put in a pose where like, don't turn your head, don't do this. If you do it, you can break your neck. I mean, it's like then you wonder, okay, why the hell are we even doing this?
Exactly.
So it's still not something I ever teach in a yoga class. For me, there's no benefit to this pose. There's no anatomical strengthening. I'm not getting any benefit. There may be a nice lower back stretch, but I can do that in a whole lot of other ways, safer ways. So it's not something I teach. It's not something I peak pose for because there's zero benefit to being in this pose. So then I question, well, then why would I teach it? If there's all these risks and no benefits, why even go there? Thanks, Alicia. So for yourself, this is more just if it's something you want to continue doing, it's your body. Now you are more informed about this pose. Candice.
I still really like it.
That's cool. And that's the thing, because a lot of you love this pose. I mean, for me, I used to just force myself into it. But now that I know, what's the point? It's not something I ever practice. But if you want to continue doing it, it's something you enjoy doing, just do it now in a safer way, Candice, which you now felt you said you feel it's better. And then go for it. But just don't put all the weight on your neck.
I think I really love it so much as well, not only because it feels good, but because I can't do any other inversions. Like I'm not there. So this to me is just an easy way of being like, I can actually do an inversion.
Absolutely. And I think that is often the thing as well. Like everyone kind of gets into the shape, whether you get into the ideal position or not, most people come into it. But Candice, that's all about to change, right? Because we got you into your headless headstand. You're upside down in handstands, whether you're walking or kicking up. So that's all about to change. And then you'll find those inversions are actually more exciting and stimulating and more beneficial. And they kind of drive you a lot more. Like shoulder balance, you're there already. There's not much more. Where the other inversions, you're going to feel how exciting it is and getting stronger and being able to balance and then playing with your legs, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. There's so much more to it. So I think it's now you've just moved up a level.
I still have a lot of work before I get there, but yes, I see where you're going.
That's the idea. We always want a little bit of work. And I promise once you've worked for a pose and then you get it, you just move on to the next thing. So it's kind of the fun is working for it. That is the yoga, and that's the work and the frustration and the excitement and all the rest that comes with it. That is it. Because as soon as you can do it, I promise you just move on to the next thing. So can do that now. Okay, what's next? It's all in the journey and not the destination. So there's all sorts of things you could say. All right, anyone else? What else do you think about the shoulder balance? Anything else you would like to share, please?
Laura, can I just ask a question that's not actually shoulder balance related, but
Absolutely.
just based off what you said earlier? When you're talking about like working towards something and then, reaching that and then setting another challenge for yourself, I feel like, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but, like at the beginning of our journey, I can't work out like what I should work on because there are about 1,000 things and I can't give them the time they need. And so like, how would I prioritize, start like strengthening different parts of the body, like how does that process even work when you're at this stage?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think this is cool, like P-pose sequencing. If you want to focus on forward bends, focus on forward bending poses, the slow lowering in forward bends. If you want to work on your flexibility, so maybe you have flexibility days that you're working on, which maybe are like your splits or your triangles or your flexy kind of poses that we always want to kind of work on. And then other days you have like strength training days, which will maybe be your arm balances and your inversions and the strength work that comes along with those. And you can kind of just alternate with strength, flexibility, skill work, whatever it is. And then it's actually so cool. And this is really what we're also teaching you. If you're working towards a pose like, I don't know, handstand with splits or whatever, something crazy, or all the components in between, you've got lots of progressions along the way. So you'll start off with your pyramids, slow lowering. You'll move into your standing splits, getting that top leg up, moving to kicking up to handstand at the wall, moving further away from the wall. So it's kind of like a step-by-step process where I think you can infuse all these different things, because a lot of the poses are helpful for next pose and then the next pose and then the next pose. So I think it's quite an exciting thing. Put together little programs for yourself, whether it's strength programs or flexibility programs, alternate, whatever. And then you break down the pose, look at all the components, and work progressively through all those stages. I mean, it's quite complex, but I mean, how exciting.
So, for example, like if I wanted to work towards handstand and everything, would I do like some dolphins, and not on the day that I'm doing handstand, but as strength training for
Dolphins less so. I would work with stuff with straight arms, so like your plank holds, like we were doing today on the wall, walking into the wall, walking away from the wall, walking into the wall, and working side planks so that you're working that straight arm, pushing through the hands. And then there's tons of things, like you can do little chair poses against the wall. Like it's really hard. It looks so easy, but like a little squat with your feet up the wall on your hands. And then you just work strength in all sorts of ways, leading towards handstand. And then you can practice different ways of kicking up into handstand as well. So you might start with like what's quite cool sometimes, my bed is fairly close to the wall, so I can have my feet on the bed, take one leg over, and then feel that bottom leg coming up. And you can work getting over in so many ways. I mean, handstand, there's tons and tons and tons of things you can do. Working on your wrists, working on the loading, working on your focal point, working on your skill kicks. It's a very, very exciting process. But for now, just start walking up the wall, holding in that plank, try and get closer and closer to the wall, walking out of the wall. And then you can hold in kind of plank and then lean over your wrists. So loads of fun things to play with.
Cool, thanks.
And enjoy it. That's the fun stuff. And you'll have days where it's terrible. But I think that's also, it's good. It's how you deal with that. That's the yoga too. And then have days where you're like, oh my God, you have such a huge breakthrough, and it makes it all worth it. And this is why it's so nice to develop a home practice. And it's difficult to get on your mat, and you guys probably have found this now because you would have had to have done it. Get on your mat and practice without anyone making you do it. And just trying to squeeze in a little bit of time every day, even if it's only like 15 minutes, get on your mat and do something. And some days it'll just be like, you want to cry in child's pose? That's fine. Some days you'll be kicking up into handstands and planks on the wall and doing crazy stuff. But make that time on your mat every day, and it's like it'll transform your practice, and it's special quality time. So I hope you all find that magic along the way. That's where you see huge things changing, because going to classes doesn't always focus on what you want to be working on. Where when you have to focus on, and it's not the stuff you want to do. It's always the stuff you're good at that you tend to want to go. Like every time I get on my mat, I just want to do back bends, but I shouldn't. I need to be doing more strength work, because there's always more strength to be had. So it's good to force you to do the stuff you don't want to do as well. You apply that to your life, and the stuff that happens on your mat happens in your life as well. It's amazing. It's very exciting.
Laura, can I ask you, I think everybody else can do handstand. I can't get myself into handstand. Are you able to, if you look at me the way I do it, are you able to say, is it my glutes that I need to work on? Is it my wrists, or is it just putting it all together?
So firstly, Tasha, you're not the only one.
Okay,
and this is so normal.
Sorry, but it makes me feel better.
No, of course not. Never in a course can everyone do a handstand. That's just impossible, because we're all at different stages, and where you're at now is completely normal and perfect. What you need to do is just get a little bit stronger, work your plank holds against the wall like we did today, walking feet up with your face facing the wall. Okay. Get closer and closer and closer to the wall. So you're walking back. So you get more and more upside down. Okay. And it's also going to help your brain. Okay. Because you can do it in forearms and everything else. Then you need to practice kicking. So that is also, it's a little bit of a fear component as well, because it's a little bit more scary. Okay, you're just going to practice kick the wall and come down. Just going to kick the wall and come down. Don't even go in with the intention to handstand. You're going to kick the wall and come down. What you can also try, okay, and sometimes it depends on the person, and I'll see you when I look at you more individually, more momentum. So for sometimes with handstands, instead of coming with your hands on the floor, that's how they do it in gymnastics and things, you can step into it from standing. So try
that is even more scary.
That's even more scary. So for you, Dasha, it's fear. Okay, so it's mental. It's not physical. Yeah, a little bit of strength would be good. Okay, because that's going to help you get over the mental. The more you do it, the more your mind is going to overcome it. It's literally, you just got to put in the time, and then your brain will go, oh my God, okay, we're not going to die. Okay, this is all right. It's not so bad. And the more you put yourself in that situation, the more your nervous system will accept being there. So that is a huge thing with handstand. It's very scary.
Okay.
And
I
you
was
just
worried
gotta
you'd
slowly get over that. And it'll happen. Kick up every day, Dasha, for the next week. Try and kick up to the wall every day. And you'll feel by the end of the week, it'll be that much less scary.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay. And also you're welcome to send me a picture, and I can also give you a video to give you a little bit more advice. If there's anything you need to do, like look forwards or lean forwards or do anything a little bit more, send us a video. Me or Catherine will be happy to help you, and we'll help you get into it. All good.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks.
I'm going to need your help as well, Laura.
Yeah, that's cool, Candice. Send me videos.
I'm ready to do it again.
Please do. We're happy to help. And listen, we do this all the time. We do this course every time. Everything you're experiencing, we know. We'll get you through it, and it'll be fine. And it's normal. Don't be so hard on yourself. Take it. Don't go in like freaking out. Go in for fun. It's just a handstand. It's just yoga. Who cares? Just going to have some fun and kick the wall and come down. And send us some videos so we can give you some tips. And that's cool. And build the strength with the wall holds, because it's also something that your wrists need to get used to, your arms need to get used to, and that's also a huge component. When you're stronger, it's less scary. If your body feels like, oh, we're not strong enough for this, it's not going to take you there. So that's also a big part of the process. Okay.
Laura, introduce us to your doggy.
This is Shiva.
Yes.
Hey, Shiva. If you were all here, she would be very excited to see you. She wants to go walking, and that's why she's giving you these looks. Hey, Shiva.
Is it a labby?
She's a retriever collie. Yay. Anything else, guys? Well done today. It's been a big day with lots of stuff. You guys are awesome and exactly where you need to be. And yeah, all good.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Enjoy your evening. I'll see some of you first thing tomorrow, but I will see the rest of you in the afternoon, I think. Okay.
Thanks, Laura.
Pleasure. Well done.
You.
Yeah.
Bye.